as freshman Ethan Chapin, his girlfriend Zana Kernodle, Kaylee Gonzalez, and Madison Mogan. It's being called a crime of passion. The killer or killers used an edged weapon such as a knife, police just revealed. I spoke with Kaylee Gonzalez's sister, Olivia, who described the last night of the students' lives.
My sisters did everything right. They went out in the buddy system. They went out together. They Ubered out. They stopped and got food. They Ubered home. They let their dog out to go potty. And then they locked their house up. They did everything right. And this still happened.
Welcome back to my mental health and crime channel. My name is Hoodie London. This is for educational purpose only. This is the case of the Idaho quadruples. May the 4 victims rest in peace. Condolence to the families, and may the correct justice be served. I'd like to thank all my subscribers, viewers, for your kind comments, your mindful comments. I really appreciate and respect you all for that. Kaylee's sister Olivia clearly said that the girls did everything right. Her sisters, that's Maddie and Kaylee, she said that they ordered the private Uber share ride that drove them at 10 p.m. to the corner club. She said they went and got some food, obviously at the grub truck, and then they ordered the private share driver once again to drive them home. She said they came home, they let their dog out to potty. That's Murphy. I'd love to know from dog owners, dog lovers, because I have a cat, I don't know much about dog behaviors. When you let your dog out to potty, do you usually take your dog out to potty, or do you let your dog go out by itself to potty? And let's remember, Murphy was a puppy, if I'm not wrong. He wasn't a big dog. He was still young. So I wonder if they let the dog out to potty, could somebody have barged in, forced themselves in, or could Maddie and Kaylee have thought they locked the door after their dog Murphy went out to potty? If that makes sense to you. I find this to be very interesting. I found this always to be an important piece of information, because let's not forget, the police told us from the beginning that there wasn't any sign of forced entry. So we still don't know where the entry point was. They thought it was most likely the sliding door behind or the windows. So when the girls went out to potty, I would love to know what time exactly it was. Did they start calling Jack D after they let the dog to potty? Question mark.
3 and 4 a.m. Sunday, and their bodies were found later that morning. The medical examiner has reportedly ruled out a murder-suicide, but even with a killer still out there on the loose, authorities say there's no risk to the other students on campus.
The police said that there's no risk to the public, but yet it wasn't suicide. Was the police giving misinformation to the public? Because there was suspect out there who did this horrific crime, but yet again the police were saying there's no danger to the public. If you all remember, there was a lot of mixed messages that was going on in the beginning from the police to the public. So the students didn't feel safe. Many of them went home. They were allowed to go home. Now, what I don't understand is you have an active, unaliving scene of 4 young victims. They don't even know who the suspect or suspects were. But yet again, everyone was allowed to go home for Thanksgiving. How is that possible? I know it's a lot of work for the police and the FBI to be talking to all the students, but that should have actually happened. The reason I say that is this house was a party house. We can't deny that. If we want to get to the truth, facts have to be put out there. Being a party house is nothing wrong because they were college students. But the fact that many people's DNA was lying in the house should have been enough for the police to have taken a lot of police integrations with every single person who's been in the house. Zana, for example, lived in the house since 2020, since she moved to the campus, 2020 or 21. She was one of the longest term tenants who was living there. So imagine how many friends Zana had, how many people came to the house, how many other roommates were there before the others moved in, how many friends each and every roommate had and surviving roommates. How could they have let people go out for Thanksgiving? I understand this was a scary situation. Everyone wanted to go home to feel safe, obviously. But why didn't the police take proper interviews of each and everybody who was going home? They should have asked their names, their address, made them sign maybe a declaration form that they could be called in for an interview. I heard they were doing interviews over the phone. Imagine that. I heard it from, I can't remember his name, A.R. Mayers, the lawyer, when he was talking to Unfiltered Lucky. He said that Jack Showalter's police integration was done over the phone. How is that possible? When the Gonsalves family were talking to CNN on the last clip I put up, they said clearly, Kaylees' father said that a week later, volunteers were gathering evidence, were finding evidence around the house that they were handing over to the police. Look at how messed up the crime scene was. We know that Chris McDonald, from the interview room, he has a channel, a big channel actually, with many viewers. He managed to find, and he's an ex-former cop who worked in San Diego for many years, found the glove outside the house. And I believe this was like a week, 10 days after the unalivings. People already went home, students already went home. The glove was found outside the property. Basically in the premises of the property. It was one of the 3 unidentified male DNAs. Why did they decide to call the FBI on the 17th of November, 5 days later? I'm sure if they called the FBI the first day, they would have come immediately. The FBI is just waiting for the call. But I guess they thought they could handle it themselves. And look at the position the case is in now. None of these people were wearing gloves. Look at how they're dressed. No mask. No hairnet. You have even the prosecutor there, behind the blue car, William Thompson. What was actually going on is the question. Evidence was tampered with and evidence was lost. If volunteers are gathering the evidence freely, I wonder what other evidence was taken from the house and outside the house. Just a question.
that are carried out by stabbings, that are carried out by multiple people. This is typically going to be one person. It's always possibility, but likelihood that it's just one we're talking about.
Like these, you need a helping hand and someone just to be there.
Sunday, the community was shocked to learn 4 students had been found dead, murdered in an off-campus home.
We know you have questions.
Tonight, investigators admitting they still have many questions surrounding the tragic deaths, walking back previous statements that there's no ongoing threat.
Based on details at the scene, we believe this was an isolated, targeted attack on our victims. We do not have a suspect at this time, and that individual is still out there. We cannot say that there's no threat to the community.
The FBI now assisting local law enforcement and state police in the case. Investigators revealing 2 of the 4 victims, Ethan Chapin from Conway and his girlfriend Xana Kernodle, were together hours before the murders at a party on campus.
It's important for us to get Ethan's story out.
Chapin's family speaking exclusively to King 5.
Ethan was a one-of-a-kind person who loved everybody. Everything.
The things that are being said are 100% not true. There's not drugs involved. There's not some weird love triangle.
The things that have been said are not true, according to Stacy Chapin, E's mother. She said there isn't any love triangle. That is not a normal sentence to say, unless people were going around saying that there was a love triangle and there wasn't any rugs involved. Now, when somebody says something like that, it makes me research more about the rug part. So, but the love triangle, why would there be a love triangle? Let's listen to this once again.
Ethan Chapin from Conway and his girlfriend Xana Kernodle were together hours before the murders at a party on campus.
It's important for us to get Ethan's story out.
Chapin's family speaking exclusively to King 5.
Ethan was a one-of-a-kind person who loved everybody. Everything.
The things that are being said are 100% not true. There's not drugs involved. There's not some weird love triangle.
The things that are being said are not 100% true. There's no love triangle or there's no rugs. Love triangle. That puzzles me. That baffles me. Why would there be a love triangle? Who was dating who? Did someone get jealous of the other person? Love triangles never usually end up well. So there was rumors circulating in the beginning that it was a love triangle and rugs. I always found that to be interesting. Stacy Chapin has also said in her interview that 2 a.m. is the hardest time for a family. Isn't that strange? 2 a.m. is when the crowd was yelling Xana's name at the grub truck and E's name. Nobody saw Xana and E after 9 p.m. People saw Ethan. They saw him at the Sigma Chi fraternity party. And he was at Betty's ball. But nobody saw Xana. So how would the police know that they came home at 1:45? That isn't true. I don't believe that. Because how could DM and BF know that they came 1:45 a.m. when they said they came home at 1 a.m. and they were sleeping? Nothing makes sense of the story. If someone is usually telling the truth and you're being genuine, it comes out automatically. Everything goes in place. You'll be like, this was the timeline. I was doing this. I was there. My phone was on silent or I was sleeping. And then when the police check, everything goes in place. But this case has never made sense because the timelines were changed. 3 to 4 a.m. is what I am so occupied of. If you check all my clips, some people, a few people, 1 or 2 people have left comments and said, oh, it's the same things you're talking about again. It's boring. But guess what? I'm not here to entertain anyone. I'm here to find the correct timeline. And so are my subscribers. So sometimes if I have to repeat things, it's because I want to get the correct timeline. I want to place the people in a certain place at that timeline. Because it'll be much more easier to find out exactly what was going on. I know this case we're never going to find out what was going on because that's the reason they put it on a gag order, in my opinion. And that's the reason they demolished the house so that all the DNAs would be gone, deleted forever. The gag order, the 3 unidentified male DNAs have gone. They let the students go home for Thanksgiving. How could you let people go home when there's an active crime scene? They did not know who did this crime. They did not know the suspect or suspects. DM and BF called people to the crime scene before 911 and the police even came. What was taken from the house? What could have been planted inside the house? We would never know. And the police would never know either. 8 hours to call the police. Didn't DM need the toilet? Was she holding out for 8 hours? Something doesn't make sense. I find this to be interesting. Police have remained tight-lipped, but have said that the suspect remains at large. Moscow Mayor Art Bedgy previously told Fox News Digital that investigators are probing as possible motives, a crime of passion or a burglary gone wrong. Pay attention to that. Probing as possible motives, a crime of passion or a burglary gone wrong. Okay, now let's think of both of them. I find it interesting. Crime of passion. We have a couple of people that clearly were around that night with Maddie and Katie. Let's start with Jack Showalter, a.k.a. Hoodie Guy. A.k.a. Hoodie Guy has harassment, sex harassments towards women. He's been kicked out of his fraternity. He told Maddie and Kaylee when he was walking to the grub truck, you know they're going to get you for that, Maddie. He's been kicked out of his fraternity, like I said. His parents were paying, allegedly, for a flat of his that was in Queens Road, a minute from the girl's house. I find this to be interesting. Jack Showalter was the one who left 2 a.m. He said he drove to Boise, Idaho. His parents' cabin, that's 5.5 hours away. Why would you drive 2 a.m. when you've been most likely drinking? He was at the corner club the whole night. What was so necessary for him to have left town? Then you have Jack D, who dated Kaylee for a couple of years. They were on and off. Besides the Gongalves family defending him, in the beginning they weren't defending him at all. He wasn't even allowed to speak at the memorial. He looked like he had injuries on his hands, according to me. His hand was swollen. His face was swollen. He looked like he was in a fight. I could be wrong about that. He has white Hyundai Elantra parked in front of his house. He has white pickup car. Maddie and Kaylee both called Jack D last. Or whoever came to the house called Jack D from their phones. 2:52 was the last call. Around those timing, we hear from the camera, "Stop it, stop." And that is from the police's body cam. We don't know if it's from 1122 Kings Road, but it could possibly be from there. Or it could have been Zana yelling for help outside or near Queens Road. The reason I say that is because Zana and E was seen at Sigma Chi fraternity right up to 2:20 or 2:10. That's what one friend, his mother, confirmed to the FBI. So they couldn't have been home at 1:45. So crime of passion could have been anyone. It could have been BK2. He could have been stalking these girls. Anything is possible. So we have crime of passion. Now let's move on to the second one, which I find very interesting. Burglary gone wrong. Now why would someone need to rob 1122 Kings Road? What was there? These are college students. It was a party house. A cab driver who drove to this house many times told the local news in Idaho, Moscow, that he drove people there to buy rugs. He said it was a party house. So if there was rugs in the house, did somebody find out and did they decide to burgle the house and something went wrong, so they ended up unaliving them? It's a possibility. It's not something that I'm actually making up. This is the fact. Police have remained tight-lipped, but have said that the suspect remains at large. Moscow Mayor Art Betgi previously told Fox News Digital that investigators are probing as possible motives. Number 1, crime of passion. Number 2, burglary gone wrong. How about if it was both of them? Now hear me out. The reason I say that is, why are they focused on 1 or 2 motives? I personally believe that all 4 or at least 3 of the victims were targets. Somebody wanted to target the couple and somebody wanted to target the girls upstairs. I don't believe that one person was the target and the rest were collateral damage. I do not believe that. Whoever came to this house, I don't believe was one person. I believe there are many people. The reason I say that, look at the 4 figures running. I know it's starting to sound like a repetition with the 4 figures, but that is extremely important. That is something we see. They said there was nothing to that. How could they say that? Because Sigma Chi fraternity president said to Brian Enton and to the other reporters that they don't have cameras, so they couldn't have seen who left and came in. We heard that there was a fight that night. We heard that David L. allegedly uses steroids. A person can get aggressive with those symptoms. And we heard that there was a fight that broke out. with the two Davids. Now, it may look like a long stretch, but when we hear all these things, put in the 4chan too, because the 4chan makes sense. They actually, whoever wrote that should have been investigated by the police. Although they were anonymous, the police can always find out who it was, because I believe that person knew a lot. They said they would do it in 19 minutes without internet. They said 3 would be on the watch, 1 would go inside and do the wet job. Let's not forget that. Then you see the 4 figures running. You see the 3 boys in Banfield. And I really believe those 3 boys came from 1122 Kings Road. They came from that direction. I don't think they came from Matt's house or anyone. I per se believe the way they looked, the way they were dressed, and the tall guy had a swollen hand. All those things should be taken in consideration. I believe that Saeed came to Banfield to distract the police because he was over 21 years old. The pictures he was watching was the first thing I pointed out 2 years ago. I showed you that, and luckily a couple of months later, the Congalvis family confirmed exactly what I saw, what Saeed was watching. They said that Kaylee was found in a sitting position. And that is exactly the pictures that Saeed was watching in Banfield. So these are extremely important things. It's like a puzzle. If you bring them all together, pay attention from 140, 145, right up to 320. What's going on? It all can't be a coincidence. I'm going back to the articles in the beginning. Click here to go to Fox News app. Telling parents there is no threat is not helpful, he said. Hiring off-duty police is a quick way to put boots and guns where they need to be, protecting students until the suspect is arrested. Yes, I do agree. They should have, they could have, and they should have and could have called the FBI immediately. Why did the FBI come on the 17th of November? Question mark. Idaho Moscow decided to call the police 5 days later. That's strange. I'm glad I found this one. These are comments left behind on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, and such things, Instagram and all. Social media, basically. I remember this clearly. I was sleeping in my apartment when I was awakened by a strange noise. Looking back, I think it was my front door handle being rattled. I opened my eyes slightly, and I could see a shadow looking into my bedroom window. The curtains were slightly apart, but I could make out the shadow of a man behind them. I was half awake asleep, and I wasn't scared at all for some reason. So I began getting out of bed to check who it was. That's when the man turned on his flashlight. He shone it directly in my eyes, and that's when I woke up. A fear like nothing else washed over me. The only thing I could do is I locked my door. I think he was only standing there with the light for a few seconds. When he ran away, I ran and thank God the door was locked. I don't know what he was trying to do, but I've left Moscow after the experience. And I remember when I read this article, this happened, I believe, around September, 2 months or 6 weeks before the girls and Eve was unalived. So there was somebody going on with black clothing and a flashlight and trying to rattle people's front doors. I don't know if it's related or if it has anything to do with this case, but I found that to be very interesting. The person This young woman left. She packed and left. And I understand where she's coming from. You can imagine that. It sounds really horrific. Okay, back to the timeline. Kaylee and Maddie were at the corner club at 202 N Main Street, I think, from 10 until 1:30 a.m. Then at a popular food truck nearby at 1:40 a.m. That's wrong. 1:44 is when they entered. The timeline shows they were back home at 1:45 a.m. Wrong again. They were back home at 1:56 a.m. according to Kaylee's sister. Police provided no additional context with the release of the map, so it's not clear how they know that all four were home at 1:45 a.m. I don't think they even know. That's why they put everything on a gag order, in my opinion. We know that the other two roommates were home sometime in the early morning hours and are cooperating with the police. Investigators say there are not persons of interest or suspects, but that no one has been ruled out. So this is Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk they talk about. But you see, they got the timelines right from the very beginning. Yes, Kaylee and Maddie were at the grub truck from 10 to 1:44 is when they entered the food truck. The timeline shows that everyone was back at 1:45 a.m. and that's not right. Kaylee and Maddie came home at 1:56. The police don't even know when Xana and E came home. The timeline is the problem. Definitely. I've made it bigger so that you can read it properly. Once you get the timelines wrong, everything else automatically becomes wrong. It does not fall in place. It's not going to add up. So this is what Idaho State Police tells KTVB News, that the man in a dark jacket and light hoodie in the video has been identified and has been interviewed as part of the routine investigation. The man arrives when Morgan and Gongalves arrive. He waits several feet behind them while they order their food, walks with them and stands right next to them as they wait for the food. My question is, why didn't Jack Showalter buy any food? Wasn't he hungry? Was he broke? Was his student finance late? Just a question. There were many people around the grub truck that did not buy food. Pay attention to that. They were just hanging around there. And I understand college students hang around everywhere. But why would he be hanging around in a food place if you're not going to buy anything, not even a drink? And they're basically saying after they ordered their food, they all left in separate directions. We saw that. Maddie and Kaylee actually left him there. They left him there hanging until Jovito told him, "Wake up, the girls have gone." And then he threw his arm up in the air and he went the opposite direction. A red car was waiting, I believe, for Jack, because as soon as he left, the car drove off. I think this is the reporter from the Daily Mail. She said, breaking news details Moscow murder. The Later County coroner says all victims were unalived using a large knife. Plus each victim was unalived more than once. Stabbed more than once. There's no indication of any assaults. They have not yet determined whether they were defensive wounds. This was right in the beginning. How come they did not know there was defensive wound when they could clearly see how Xana's fingers look like. They said it was severe. Or the word they said I forgot, but basically she was badly injured. How couldn't they know there was defense wounds or not? These were the things that were going on the social media, right in the beginning. From what I've read, the roommates were downstairs, hungover in bed, and called a friend to come over and bring them food. It was that friend who called 911 when they entered the house. That's not what we heard, but anything is possible. Always pay attention, not only to the facts, the rumors, the speculations that was coming from the college in the first couple of days, first couple of weeks. Because what we are trying to do is put in the pieces and try and make sense of the whole quadruple situation. Okay. Early in the evening, victims Xana Knodel and Ethan Chapin were at the party on campus away from the crime scene. Madison Morgan and Kaylee Congalvis were at the bar and came home at approximately 1:45 a.m. Wrong. They came home at 1:56. That's what even the cab driver said, private share driver and elevator. Police who arrived on the scene were there for a wellness check. Instead, officers found the 4 victims and other people who were not hurt. The victims had been stabbed with a knife. Police do not know if they were attacked with the same weapon. An autopsy is taking place. So they don't even know if it was the same weapon or if it was a similar weapon. I believe there could have been 2 or 3 K-bar weapons that were used. A sharp-edged weapon was used on E and Xana, I believe. They spoke about that in the beginning. So it's the same article. Officers said there was no sign of forced entry into the residence. When the police arrived, the door was still open. Pay attention to that. Officers continue sorry guys, I need my glasses. Just hold on one second. To reiterate that this was a what? Isolated, targeted attack. It was an isolated, targeted attack. Officers said there was no sign of forced entry into the residence. So that proves, for me, it was somebody that knew them. They knew exactly where to come in from. Whether it was the windows, many people had the code to come in. The front door was left wide open. Chances for Brian Koberger to have done all this by himself. I don't think the girls would have even let him in. Unless BK was chilling in that house and partying in the house and he decided one day, that's it, I really don't care. Things are not going well in my life. And he had an urge to do it, and he knows the house exactly, because the house was in the way the house is built inside. You have to know it well, the design of the house, to go to each and every room. So these were people who knew them. When the police arrived, the door was still open. Officers continued to reiterate that this was an isolated, targeted attack. Officers said they have no suspects. They also can't say if there's no threat to the community. Officers said that the 2 roommates of the victims were at home at the time of the attack and were not hurt. Police say they don't know why the other 2 roommates were not harmed. Officers did not divulge who the 911 caller is. There was no attempt of a robbery. There was no attempt of a robbery. But yet again, they said in the beginning that could have been a crime of passion or a burglary. So, okay, so they ruled out burglary. They didn't rule out the crime of passion. All they said was that it was a targeted attack. And it looks like whoever got into this house and did these horrific crimes knew the girls, knew the house, knew the code, I believe, because they left the door wide open, or unless somebody inside the house let them in. Because there was no windows broken, there were no doors broken, and the police said there was no forced entry. Somebody let them in. Now this is interesting. This was on 22nd October, literally 3 weeks before the quadruples. Somebody put out this alert, Moscow public alert. This sounds like clickbait, but it's not. Last night after 2 a.m., our neighbor's sweet little dog was skinned like a deer. No animal did this. Our dog is bigger and was so anxious about the same thing that he tore his bed up into 1,000 pieces. Also, our cat has been missing. Our cat has been missing for the last couple of days. Not sure if this is tied to Halloween, and I don't really care. I'll be chambering all my firearms, and I would suggest everyone else in North Moscow to do the same. So basically, somebody saying this wasn't for clickbait, but my dog has been skinned, my cat is missing, and he's going to basically take the law into his own hand and use his firearms. He doesn't know if it's related to Halloween or not. Quite interesting. Wasn't there the other dog that was skinned? The ones that the old couple owned? That was sad. So is this some kind of loose person who's mentally disturbed? A psychopath. Sorry to say, antisocial personality disorder. Hurting animals. That's really sad. And hurting human beings is even worse. But this was on Facebook.
Crime scene here just steps away from the University of Idaho campus. Developments have come out at least every hour this afternoon, but right now we do know that Moscow police are remaining on scene tonight. We have an officer patrol car at the scene of the home of the 4 University of Idaho students, and police tape is still up. But here's what we know so far about what happened. Moscow police responded to King Road for a call about an unconscious person Sunday afternoon. When police arrived, they found the 4 deceased students inside the home. This morning, the city of Moscow and University of Idaho identified all 4 U of I students. Freshman Ethan Chapin of Conway, Washington, was a member of the Sigma Chi fraternity. Zaina Kernodal, a junior from Post Falls, was a member of the Pi Beta Phi sorority. Madison Mogan was a senior from Coeur d'Alene, and Kaylee Gonsalves was a senior from Rathdrum.
This is a pretty traumatic situation for our campus community.
Dean of Students Blaine Eccles says news of the suspected homicide shocked the Vandal community.
This is rocking their world. Many of them come from small communities where things like this have never happened.
He says drop-in counseling is available to students at any time. But he recognizes that many students have already returned home early for the upcoming holiday.
People need to navigate through this situation in the way that best suits them. If students need to go home, be closer with their families, want to return home, I support them in doing that. We're going to support them in doing that.
Support.
This is what I'm puzzled about. Sorry. I do understand that the students need to go home and be with their families if they want. I understand that counseling is really important in such a traumatic state of mind. But what I don't understand is, why did they let the students go home when there's an active crime scene? When you let somebody go home for Thanksgiving and they come back a couple of weeks later, it's not like they're going to remember everything they heard or saw. It is really important to gather information and everything from all the neighbors, all the students. We saw the neighbors packing and leaving and driving off. This doesn't make sense, because the real suspect or suspects could have actually gone home on Thanksgiving.
And his brother was also attending the University of Idaho. Coming up tonight at 6:30, we'll hear from Chapin's childhood neighbors who described him and his siblings like grandchildren. Now, this story began to unfold yesterday afternoon when the U of I sent a push alert to students ordering them to shelter in place.
Since then, the campus has been on edge. Classes were canceled today in the wake of these deaths, but some students say that they're concerned about staying on campus, and many of them choosing to leave for Thanksgiving break a week early, including one student who lives across from the house where the bodies were found.
My mom has called me every single hour for since 7 a.m. this morning. So yeah, they want me to come home if I don't feel safe. They just said come home. A week worth of school isn't worth it. If you're just gonna be scared every night. So it was every little noise. I was is someone in the house? I don't know. And it was just scary. It's all just shocking and scary. I never would have thought that this would have happened here.
She has every right to be scared, and she has every right to go home. The reason I say that is because she was the next door neighbor, the closest house to 1122 Kings Road. The house that the doorbell or the camera captured the yelling, the thud on the floor, the dog barking. It was her house, or she was living there, I believe, with a couple of other students. So they must have heard everything. Poor girl, you can see that actually from her face. She said that every minute she felt like somebody was in the house. I can imagine that. What I see is a young girl in pain, sadness, heartbroken. She definitely knows what happened, but she can't talk about it because she could be scared for her life.